What's good, G Life? This right here is my home, the San Fernando Valley, the 818. You already know the 818 is home to a lot of different barrios, within all the surrounding cities that reside within the San Fernando Valley, which is located in LA County, so it is a part of LA. I mean, so much to the point that LAPD is the ones that patrol the streets of the San Fernando Valley. For the ones that try to say that it's not the same thing, when it's like, how is that if we're being patrolled by LAPD, my guy? Now, I know that there's many cities within the San Fernando Valley, but we shall be concentrating on one of the oldest areas within the San Fernando Valley, which is known as the area of Pacoima. And already knowing that the area of Pacoima has a lot of different barrios that represent the city of Pacoima, but are all different individual gangs. And with no further ado, let's get into it.
I keep it G like a G is supposed to. I'm from the old school, no one comes close to. Post it up and I do what I want to. Post it up and I do what I want to. I keep it G like a G is supposed to. I'm from the old school, no one comes close to. Post it up and I do what I want to. Post it up and I do what I want to. I keep it true and I mean every last word. I was fooled by the truth, real gangsters. White tee creased up with a strap too. I'm from the bottom where we earn all our tattoos. Boy, it's taboo when you living just like I do. Air is up and you know we keep it all blue. I keep it loony and I don't mean like cartoons. They talk brave till they hear that click, clap, boom. It is what it is, we do what the G's do. Celebrate so we hotbox the whole room.
You are now watching M.O.D. Entertainment.
Now, like I mentioned, here in the San Fernando Valley, there is a lot of different barrios that reside within the area of Pacoima. Pacoima being one of the largest and oldest cities within the San Fernando Valley. So, you can see why that is, right? And not only that, but it is home to a lot of raza and also African Americans. As a matter of fact, it was the area in which you were able to buy land if you were somebody of color, right? So you had a lot of different ethnicities that resided within the San Fernando Valley and the area of Pacoima itself. Right? So it gravitated a bunch of different people from all over the place, right? From different ethnicities, different backgrounds. And you got one of the oldest Hispanic gangs within the area, right? Now, it is debated which is the oldest gang in the San Fernando Valley, whether it's between Vario Kkbz and, Pacoima, right? That's why their history goes back since way back, and their rivalry as well. But the first original neighborhood within the area of Pacoima, meaning the Pacoima gang, is the Vario Pacoima 13, Pacas 13, right? Or just Vario Pacoima, right? Which was the original neighborhood in the area. And not only that, but a bunch of other, Pacoima gangs branched off of the Treces, like the Criminals and the Brownstone Locals and the Crazy Boys and, several others, right? So, because, Pacoima itself has cliques to it, like the Tiny Locos, the Sparkies, and all that, right? So you have barrios that, coexist within the Pacoima 13, but then you have certain barrios that broke off and, went to do their own thing. So, like I said, the history and the dynamics of Pacoima, it goes deep, it runs deep. Now, the Pacoima 13, the P13 or PT, Tiny Locos, their barrio is everything that is between what's Terabella, and Haddon Avenue all the way to Osborne, and Osborne all the way to San Fernando Road, and everything in the middle is considered their barrio, right? Everything that stretches out, throughout Telfair that, slices through the heart of their hood. And that area in itself, and you can also find them located in throughout the whole entire area of Pacoima, right? But this is their domain, the heart of their hood, their dojo, right? And like I said, they do have connections with other Pacoima cliques like the Southside Locals, and several others, right? So there is alliances, but then there's rivalries because they do beef it with other cliques. So like I said, it does get kind of complex when we're talking about this area. But this is one of the oldest and largest cliques of Pacoima because obviously they've been around for so long. So they have, hundreds of members to them. And it's a barrio that I'm well familiar with, and they do have members that put it down and they continue to still be an active bunch that, holds it down for their territory and continues to put theirs on the map for the Pacoima Treses right there. Now, another one of the neighborhoods that you can find here in Pacoima is known as the Pacoima GST. GST translating to Pacoima Goleta Street. Now, this happens to be one of Pacoima more smaller barrios, right? But nonetheless, still a real neighborhood, right? Up to, at least from what I was told, up to like 50 to 60 members, right, that they had. It was never a large neighborhood, right? It never had like large territory, They mostly, were located where Goleta Street is at, right? And everything where the police department is at in Pacoima, all the back streets on Wingo and all of those locations, right, is where you were able to find the, Goleta Streeters, right? I don't know if they had any alliances with the other Pacoima cliques, right? Because it seems like they didn't really get along with any of the other cliques except maybe the Van Nuys boys, right? But hey, they held their own, even though they weren't one of the larger ones, right? And, they, tend to feud with the other cliques, right? They still managed to help, hold their ground and to, represent theirs and continue to put theirs on the map, right? For the Pacoima Goleta Streets right there. Now, another neighborhood that you have right here in the area of Pacoima. Now, this neighborhood, is already in the outskirts of Pacoima, where it's already heading in towards San Fernando, right? But still, nonetheless, is a Pacoima neighborhood, right? And it's one of Pacoima's one of the more smaller neighborhoods, right? But nonetheless, still hold it down and have real individuals, right? And it's still an active neighborhood, and which is known as the Pacoima VST. VST is translating to Pacoima Vaughn Street, not to be confused with Valerio, right? Now, Vaughn Street is a neighborhood that has already been well established here in Pacoima, right, since the 80s. And their territory is everything that essentially is from what the Pacoima washes at, right, all the way to Bradley Avenue, all the way to the, 118 freeway, to Glen Oaks Boulevard, back around. Everything in the middle of that is considered their barrio, right? Everything that slices through what Herrick Avenue, that, goes through their neighborhood, right? So essentially, what's Herrick and, Vaughn, Del Garmo and Vaughn, right? But all that area is considered the Vaughn Streets neighborhood. Now, it's not a big chunk of territory, but nonetheless, they still hold it down right there, right? And at least from what I was told, this neighborhood was roughly more than 80 members to them. And they seem to be another one of these Pacoima cliques that tends to beef it with, other Pacoima neighborhoods, right? A lot of animosity, within that area, for whatever reasons, right? But this is one of, the neighborhoods that still represents right here and puts it down for, the city of Pacoima and the Vaughn Street. Now, another neighborhood that you have right here in Pacoima, right, but is actually a little bit more different than the other Pacoima neighborhoods, right? Because considering the fact that they are in the city of Pacoima, but unlike the rest of the Pacoima neighborhoods, you really don't see the Pacoima, title attached to their neighborhood, right? Like, they don't really put the Pacoima on the title of what their neighborhood is, right? Which is a DEBS, translating to Dead End Boys. And even though they're in the city of Pacoima, they don't title it like that. It's not like Pacoima Dead End Boys, right? It's just Dead End Boys, and they're just located in Pacoima, right? So unlike the rest of the neighborhoods, this one's a little bit more different in that sense, right? And it was a little bit more of a smaller neighborhood than the rest of the neighborhoods within Pacoima, but nonetheless, a real neighborhood, right? With up to, at least from what I was told, 65 to, a little bit more members, right? And they're still a functioning neighborhood, despite what individuals, want to say. But the reason, like I said, it just doesn't get talked about or forgotten when people mention the city of Pacoima is because of the fact that they're not attached, to Pacoima like the rest of the neighborhoods, within it being in the title and, something that they represent, along with their neighborhood, right? Even though they are in the city of Pacoima and prideful of that, right? They're just dead end boys, right? And their territory is everything that's from Van Nuys Boulevard. Van Nuys Boulevard, their territory stretches to where the 5 freeway's at. From the 5 freeway, it goes all the way to Terabella. From Terabella, their territory extends all the way to what's Lord Canyon and back around. Everything that is what's Remick and all the dead ends of Remick, because Remick in that area, because of the freeway, is nothing but dead ends, right? So what's like Pierce Street is a dead end. What's Gagger Street is a dead end. Gain Street is a dead end. All of those areas are dead ends. That's hence where they got their name, Dead End Boys, right? And this is the belly of the beast, their domain, and where they continue to still hold it down and represent for theirs and putting theirs on the map for the Dead End Boys. Now, another barrio that you have within the area of Pacoima, right? Now, this is another one of Pacoima's cliques that is not as large as the other ones, right? Because it's not as old school, roughly being around since the 80s, but is a well-known clique, which is known as the Vario Kkbz. Kkbz translating to Vario Pacoima Knock Knock Boys. Now, when I had first done the G series, I had seen that people were trying to say that this had to be a crew, or what kind of a name is that? Nah, it's probably not a real neighborhood. No, this is the real neighborhood. It was never a crew. This, they're, that's just their name, right? Knock Knock Boys, right? You had some funk with them. They would come knocking at your door, bro. You know what I'm saying? These individuals are a real neighborhood right here in, Pacoima. Now, they're another clique that's also associated with the Latin Times and the Kugas, right? But like I said, all these barrios are their own individual neighborhoods. And this one is not as large as the other ones, right? But nonetheless, they still hold a presence. And their territory is everything that's essentially was Terrabella and Sharp. And not only Terrabella and Sharp, but Terrabella and Barty Avenue, right? So everything that's by the freeway wall and, that iconic tunnel that splits between the freeway, right? That you see come out in movies, and a lot of people that are in the area are familiar with it, right? That is what's considered, the belly of the beast, the lion's den. You know what I'm saying? That's where it cracks. And that is the barrio of the Knock Knock Boys. But like I said, you can find them spread out throughout all of this area, but essentially that is their dojo. And like I said, they're up to like 80 members to them, I was told, and continue to still hold the presence and hold it down for their barrio, and right there representing. Now, another neighborhood that you have right here in the area of Pacoima. Now, this one being a little bit different because it is not as large and it is not as old school as, let's say, the Treses, the Flats, the Latin Times, and, these other clicas, right? But nonetheless, it is a barrio that, puts it down and has held their ground, right? Which is known as the Vario CSL, right? Which is translates to Pacoima Cayuga Street. Now, Pacoima Cayuga Street is one of Pacoima's more smaller sets, like I said, because it hasn't been around for that long, right? Starting since the 80s that it was established, right? But nonetheless, a real clica that puts it down for their barrio. And like I said, even though they align themselves with the Latin Times and the Knock Knock Boys, all these barrios are their own separate, individual neighborhoods with their own clicas to them, like example, Cayuga having the Dukes and the Locos and the Mexicans, cliques to their barrio, right? Now, people get it misconstrued because they think just because somebody aligns themselves with another neighborhood that it's because they can't handle their own scandal, but it's not that. It's just that they have good relationship, whether it be through family members or whatever ties they have going on, right? That is the reason for the alignment, right? It's not so much that it's because they can't handle their own, beefs, right? That's just haters saying stuff just to, hate on the neighborhood. But like I said, these guys have real individuals that hold it down for theirs and have held it down for their barrio and continue to still be established and putting it down for theirs. Now, their territory is everything that's on Cayuga and Pierce Street. That's their dojo, the heart, that's the belly of the beast. That is where it goes down, right? But essentially, their whole entire neighborhood is what's San Fernando Road all the way to Van Nuys Boulevard, Van Nuys Boulevard all the way to Laurel Canyon all the way to Terrabella and back around. Everything in the middle and what, slices through Cayuga is considered their barrio. And where you're able to find them, roaming around and doing their thing, right? And like I said, even though they're not as large as some of these other Pacoima sets, right? They still, nonetheless have up to 60 to 80 members, I was told, roughly around. So they still have enough individuals to, get it cracking and continue to still be established and putting it down for theirs. Now, another old Pacoima barrio that you have right here within the city of Pacoima is known as the Vario LTP. LTP translating to Vario Latin Times Pacoima. Los Tiempos Pacoima. Now, this is another one of the, oldest and largest clicas of the pacoima sets, right? Which dates back already to the 1950s. So this is one of the larger and older one of the clicas next to Pacoima 13 and Pacoima Flats. This is another one of the large and well dominant clicas of Pacoima, right? Los Tiempos Pacoima. And like I said, I heard people trying to say that it was just a saying, right? And that they're the same as Pacoima 13, but that's not true. Even though it does sound like a saying when people say like Los Tiempos or Latin times, they think that they're saying it like as a catchphrase, but it's not. That's actually the name of the barrio, right? And like I said, it's its own individual neighborhood because it has its own individual cliques to it, like the Pequeños and the tiny Diablos or Tiny Dukes, the TDS, which was a tag banging crew that became a part of their barrio. It was a well-recognized, crew back in the days, TDS. It stood for a lot of different things, but for those who are from the San Fernando Valley will know what I'm talking about, with the history of that crew, because it was a crew that was well-known, right? And it became a clica of the Latin Times Barrio, right? And even though the Latin Times Barrio does have alliances, like, for example, they're aligned with the Knock Knock Boys and Cayuga Street. But like I said, each of these barrios, even though they click up and align themselves, they're their own individual barrios with their own individual clicas to them. You feel me? So it's not the same gangs, even though they coexist, right? So this is another one of, Pacoima's larger sets, which, members are in the hundreds because, like I said, it's been around for so long. Now, their barrio, you can find them everything that's between Haddon all the way to their barrio stretches all the way to Terabella all the way to where the freeway's at, and from the freeway all the way to where Osborne is at and back around. Everything in the middle is considered their barrio, right? But the heart of their hood, their main domain is on Lauren Canyon and Canyon, right? So everything in the middle of all that and what's, through the back streets of, Pacoima Middle School and all of that is considered the Latin Times Barrio. But not just right here, right? Because you can also find a branch of their barrio where the Rogers Park is at. That is the Latin Times Park. I know that, you have the Pacoima Parublas that are right there as well. But that park is known as the Latin Times Park, right? Like I said, I have family members who are from, Latin Times. So I am well aware of their neighborhood. So, and, my family members do stay right there, like across from the park. So, you know what I mean? So I well know the dynamics between, the neighborhood. And so that park is definitely their park. So you can also find them around the area of the Rogers Park. So this is a barrio that you can find spread out in different locations, not just within the surrounding areas that I mentioned, right? Like I said, when gangs have been around for so long and established right here, you can pretty much find them spread out throughout the city, right? But this at least is the belly of the beast and their main domain right here, and they still hold it down, representing for theirs and their barrio. Now, another neighborhood that you have here in Pacoima. Now, this is another neighborhood that I actually get asked a lot about, right? And a lot of people seem to be confused about, which is the Vario Pacoima SSL. SSL translating to Pacoima Southside Locals. Now, I am aware that there is a lot of Southside local neighborhoods, right? You have, Southside local neighborhoods throughout Los Angeles. You even have Southside local neighborhoods that are out of state. But these Southside locals and those Southside locals are two different gangs, right? They just happen to share the same name, Southside locals, except that these guys are Pacoima Southside locals, so they have no connection to the other Southside local neighborhoods, right? I know it kind of gets complicated, right? But it's one of those things where they just happen to have the same name, but they are different gangs, right? And like I said, the Pacoima Southside locals are their own individual neighborhood, even though they get along with the Pacoima Treses, right? And they coexist together. They are still two different neighborhoods, right? So don't get it twisted. And the Southside Locals neighborhood has been around since roughly around the 70s, right? And they may not be one of Pacoima's larger neighborhoods, but still, nonetheless, they're, they do their thing, right? They have their members right there that hold it down. I happen to know a few individuals from this neighborhood, right? Like shout out to Osito. And this also happens to be the neighborhood in which the rapper Young Uno is the neighborhood he comes from, right? I recommend his music. He's a very talented individual when it comes to, rapping, Chicano rap. He's very underrated, bro. More people need to be fucking with his music because the individual's gifted. I'm not a hater. The individual gets down when it comes to the rapping skills. Now, you can find the Southside Locals neighborhood, everything that's located within the Haddon apartmentplex and the back streets. Now, the Haddon apartmentplexes, they're not projects, but they're kind of like projects, right? It's a multiple of apartments, joined together, right? They're gated, right? So pretty much they're projects without actually being called projects. So they're known as the Haddon's apartment places, right? And that is, their domain, their stopping ground. That is the belly of the beast right there, right? And all the back streets that reside within that area. That is where you're able to find their, their turf and where they do their thing. But that's what's up with the Pacoima Southside Locals. Now, another one of these neighborhoods that you have right here in Pacoima, right, that originally was just like a smaller branch, like kind of like a crew / cliques, it was seen as, right? That's one of the reasons why, not that many people have heard of this neighborhood, right? But it was a real neighborhood, right? That was established, right? Now, it's not as active as like some of these other sets no more, due to the fact of, so many different, cliques right there, and it's just harder to establish like that. Was the Vario LP translating to Little Pacas. Little Pacas was a more smaller branch that aligned themselves with Pacoima 13, right? But they were their own separate thing, kind of like what DWP or HK or some of these other Pacoima, well-known Pacoima sets, that were around, MRH, and, sets like that aligned themselves with Pacoima, or TDS, for example, right? So you had several, Pacoima's crew type, things going on, Little Pacas being no different. And it was more on the San Fernando and Osborne area, right? Through those back ends where you were able to find this neighborhood. Like I said, it's no longer like an active neighborhood like that, but it was a real neighborhood that continued to still be established right there. And it still holds some presence, right there.